Hey folks, Ira here. So, we talk a lot on this show about big ideas and crunching numbers, but sometimes the most statistically significant things in our lives aren't what you'd expect. I mean, let's just take something as simple as a dinner invitation. On the surface, it's a small act. Maybe you even forget what you ate a week later. But statistically and emotionally, whoa, it can be a real inflection point, right? Like, there's this whole data trail kicking off from that one moment. Two people veer onto a different path, just from a, hey, want to grab a bite? It's got me thinking about how in data terms, those little events are like outliers that suddenly reset the mean for everything that follows. So how do we begin to quantify something like that? I mean, AI these days can spot spikes in time series data, flag anomalies in transactions, but what about these human moments? If you feed enough life stories into a model, could it actually identify which events were, emotionally pivotal? My gut says maybe, but it's messy. Real life never fits elegantly into a regression line, does it? Still, maybe you'd see clusters of sentiment or sudden upticks in communication patterns. I keep coming back to this notion. Statistically significant isn't always what it looks like on paper. That reminds me, a little tangent, this one data profiling project I did a few years back, there was this one anomaly, just a tiny inconsistent value in a sea of records, and everybody just ignored it for months. But I couldn't let it go, right? Turns out that anomaly was masking a structural gap in the entire system. Once we drilled down, we not only fixed it, but improved the performance across 4 different departments. It's funny, that's how a single moment or data point ends up cascading into bigger change, sometimes changing the whole trajectory. Almost poetic in a database admin kind of way. Okay, so let's pivot just a bit because I want to drill into what happens when those moments aren't happy ones. Let's talk about loss. I mean, heavy stuff, losing connection, losing people, losing part of your daily routine. In the case study we're looking at today, there are 2 kinds of disconnection, tech and, tragedy. Somebody has their phone taken away. That's frustrating. But then losing a spouse, that's, a complete kind of devastation. Can AI or even a careful analyst compare those things? What data points even matter? Is the duration of pain a factor? The frequency of checking an empty inbox? That subtle drift in sentiment over time? One question that sticks with me is whether data sets can really capture the difference between a sudden, abrupt change where you just get blindsided or the more anticipated slow declines. Like, does the system know the shock when you lose access overnight versus the numbness that builds up over months? An automated process might just log both as missing data events, but obviously those aren't weighted the same in a person's heart, right? Helplessness is hard to encode. Even with sentiment analysis or frequency mapping, you miss the flavor of it. Brings back this memory from a pretty hairy ETL deployment I ran. One of my main collaborators got pulled away mid-project, right when we needed all hands on deck. And for weeks, 0 contact. Our automated systems kept throwing errors, retrying, timing out, just stuck in a loop. I remember sitting there thinking, yeah, this is what helplessness looks like in data. The system can't adapt, just keeps waiting on something that isn't coming back. When people talk about the emotional weight of separation, you really see those parallels. It's the gap and how long it takes to fill. And sometimes you never do. Speaking of gaps, let's look at the other side. How recovery can sometimes surprise us in the data. All right, so let's zoom in on transformation. Somewhere in this message, there's a mention of dropping 115 pounds in just over a year. That's like a huge spike in the health metrics, right? We talked about my recovery and weight loss journey a few episodes back. In that case, it was a slow grind, almost 4 years. Rapid shifts like 115 pounds in 12 or 13 months, those are statistical outliers. And the thing is, outliers catch your eye. But if you just rely on averages, you totally miss the human story underneath. So what if we let AI loose on this kind of health story? You'd see wild swings in weight, blood work, maybe improvement in a few markers. But would the system know what's real healing and what's just temporary noise? Sometimes recovery isn't linear. It's setbacks, rebounds, a step forward, 2 steps sideways. And out of all that, real resilience starts to show as maybe longer windows without error or fewer negative spikes in sentiment. Back when I was working on this big health analytics project, we'd always find these statistical outliers, cases that defied the model but ended up teaching us the most about recovery, or about what normal should actually look like. Recovery, whether emotional or physical, is such a messy set of signals, but when you look at enough stories, there are patterns. Sometimes people go through hell, then stabilize, and you see their personal uptime increase, fewer crashes, better overall performance, And like AI and automated stats can get us so far, but there's always this piece, one tiny data point that the model just can't explain. That's the stuff that's most human about us. Anyway, thanks for riding along as we dug through some emotional data today. Next time, we'll tackle another layer in this whole puzzle. Maybe, if we're lucky, crack just a bit more of the code on how data reflects our lives. See you then.